Leading, supporting, collaborating. Welcome to the Online Lounge, Network Cork's podcast series.
Hello and welcome to the Network Cork vodcast mini-series. If you're joining us for the first time today, this is part of a wider series of vodcasts, bringing you content, hosts and participants dealing with a variety of themes to support you in living a better, fuller, more sustainable life. This current mini-series is all about all things coaching related. This is your one-stop shop to find out what it is, what to do if you want to become a coach, how to know if you need a coach, how to identify the right coach for you. As ever, we're recording today from the M5 Stone studio in Cork, supported by the wonderful Coco and Ian and the great Network Cork podcast team made up of Paula Scopetta and Lorna Horgan. I'm your host, Maeve Lankford, and I'm a transformational coach, and I believe in people. I believe each one of us is far more powerful and contains more potential than any circumstance, situation or condition. I work with clients to create a vision for a life they'd love to live, and I teach them how to develop the mindset and the strategy to achieve it. Joining me today is Angela Smiddy. Angela, you're owner of Insightful Works Coaching Solutions. You specialise in supporting healthcare professionals and supporting clients with interview and career coaching. So tell us a little bit about your background and what got you into coaching in the first place.
Hi Maeve, thanks so much for having me here today.
Pleasure.
Yes, so I suppose I've always had an interest in people development, and I suppose my earlier career was around human resource management, really, specialising in, I suppose, recruitment, placement services, and then in my later years, I suppose the longest tenure I've had is in learning and development. So I was with leadership and talent development with the health service executive here at Cork, and I suppose really my portfolio there was management and leadership development. And how I got into coaching, I suppose, was, we had a huge range of supports, I suppose, in the classroom setting for our staff. And when we were doing our evaluations, what we really realised was that the implementation of what our staff, I suppose it was what they struggled with.
Yes.
So at the time, coaching had become, I suppose, huge. This was around 2010. So I thought, okay, maybe let's go off and look at how coaching might support them to kind of bridge that gap.
Great.
So I trained through a diploma in 2010. Mm-hmm. And I suppose how I implemented that then was, we had the platform in terms of our leadership development programs, and then I suppose promoting coaching as a way for having that space to kind of look at how do I implement what I've learned, how do I take that time out and actually see how this is actually going to work for me, how can I put the things that I've learned on my leadership program into practice. Yeah. Sure. So I suppose then as time went on, there was more and more interest in coaching. Mm-hmm. So I developed an internal coaching network in the area.
Wonderful.
There was a number of staff that had trained as coaches that we didn't realise had actually done that. So we had a wide range of coaches with varying backgrounds in the health service. And then I went on to complete a master's actually in 2017 then, which kind of really, I suppose, bridges the gap in terms of the academic side of coaching.
Okay. And what difference or what help did it make to have the academic side as well as the...
So I suppose one huge thing was the thesis. So I was able to do a bit of research in the organisation, and I did that with the internal coaching network actually.
Wonderful.
It was around how the practice of mindfulness helped them be present for their clients. And then I suppose introduced to a number of different coaching approaches. Yeah. So looking at the psychodynamic side of it, looking at solution-focused coaching, person-centred coaching. So just, I suppose, bringing a wide range of approaches to how I actually coached my clients.
Exactly. And I guess that's with all coaches really, that the broader the tool belt, the more supportive you can be to any individual that meets us. Yeah, absolutely. So Angela, now you focus on interview and career coaching. So maybe tell us a little bit about what that involves.
Yep. So I suppose fast forward to 2020 and I decided to take the leap and leave the health service executive and start my own coaching consultancy. So I suppose it was a bit of a career journey to that, in that I suppose when I did come out, first of all, I was kind of all things to all people. So just testing the market.
Sure. Yes.
Very much, I suppose, focusing on what my strengths were. So leadership coaching, bit of career coaching, bit of interview coaching, bit of training. There was a lot of that, I suppose, offerings out there. And I suppose really what happened for me is my clients found me. That's the best way I can describe it, in that I guess my background was healthcare. public sector, and I suppose they were the bulk of my clients that were really finding me. I think when, your clients work with you, they like that you can understand their world.
Yes.
And as you can imagine, the world of healthcare can be a very challenging one.
And complex.
And I suppose when somebody comes to you for coaching, if they don't have to kind of explain the challenges they have, the fast-paced environment, if they know that you understand that, you can kind of cut through the noise very quickly and get them to where they need to be. Yeah. So I suppose I kind of, played around. I still work with other clients that are not public sector or health service, but the bulk of my clients are that. So now I advertise myself as an interview and career coach for healthcare professionals.
Okay. And when you talk about, initially you were coaching as an internal coach within the organisation, then you went out and you mentioned when we were speaking in preparation for the podcast that, internally people kind of knew what to expect from a coach. Yes. And now you find sometimes you have to explain what coaching is and what it's not. Yeah. So how would you define coaching, or how do you explain it to your clients?
So I suppose, again, when you're an internal coach, you have a platform.
Sure.
So, you have internal prospectuses, you have, your leadership programs, you can talk about coaching. Whereas if somebody comes to you as a consultant, they may not have had that opportunity to hear about it. So again, internally, we would have been very lucky in that we had a counselling service as well.
Sure.
So again, people were very familiar with that. So how I describe it is coaching is very future focused. Yes. So it's very much a person has a goal, they want to make a change, they have something in the future that they want to do.
Yes.
And I suppose that's what coaching is all about. Coaching is a thinking partnership, I suppose, to help the person to get to where they need to be. Whereas counselling is very much, looking back, maybe exploring unresolved issues. And I suppose sometimes there may be some emotional things that need to be addressed, and that's more appropriate for a psychotherapist or a counsellor.
Sure.
Sometimes, if people come, they may need to work with a counsellor before maybe they work with a coach. So I think you need to be very clear what coaching is and isn't with people, and that really in coaching, you're the expert of your own life and the coach is there merely to help you to get where you need to be.
Yes, absolutely. So in the context of career, you talk about that you're a career coach, but you've said there can be different types of career coaches even. So how would you maybe distinguish them and tell us a bit about what you specialise in?
Yeah, so there's kind of 3 areas that I would work with and 3 different kind of spheres, I suppose, around career coaching. So the first one is helping my clients with career management capacity. So that is really kind of strategizing. So you will have somebody who will come and they might want, anything from a short, medium, long-term strategy around their career. So that's the first piece that I would work with. That's usually a longer engagement with me. Secondly, then I would work with people around career transition. So they kind of know they want to make the move. They're not sure exactly what. So we're looking at, what skills they have, what they enjoy and where they want to go, knowing that. Yes. And then I suppose you have the career resilience piece. And this, I suppose, is looking at where people are at in any moment of their career and personal life. So for a lot of people, something like a classic one would be somebody who becomes a parent. And I suppose time becomes a lot more limited in terms of what they can give to their professional lives. Sure. So it's about helping them with that transition. Or it may be there is a lot of change happening in the workplace and people have been used to working in a particular way and now they find they need a different set of skills, competencies around that. So it's helping them with that particular transition. Might be moving into a leadership role. They've been a specialist. Yes. So what are the skills now that they need to help them to survive and be resilient as their career actually moves? So they're the kind of 3 areas.
Okay. So I'm thinking there's probably a lot of our listeners today who are in any of those kind of experiences, whether it's resilience requirements or transition requirements. What is a tip that you might give people if they're feeling a bit stuck at the moment?
A good thing to do, and what I would do with my clients when they come for career coaching, is one of the first exercises is called a career health check. So that's really starting to look at, where am I at the minute? So I would ask people simple questions like, and you can ask yourself this if you're listening, on a Monday morning, how do I feel about going to work? So if you have that feeling in the pit of your stomach, it's exploring that. So what is it specifically that you do not want to go in and face? Secondly, then it's, what you enjoy, what don't you enjoy, and exploring that. what are the relationships like at work? What are your relationships with your colleagues like? What are your relationships like with your manager? And are you bringing work home? And I mean that in two senses. Physically, are you actually finding you have to bring it home? Or mentally. Are you ruminating?
Yes.
And what are you ruminating about? For example, I had somebody a couple of weeks ago, and their rumination was the whole thing was around their management, I suppose, responsibilities. So, they decided when they did this exercise that their Monday morning, feeling was around that side of the role, and they didn't want to do it anymore. So that's kind of maybe a step-by-step approach for any listeners that are wonderful.
So yes, definitely worth engaging with. I think we can all identify with that Monday morning feeling. If not now, we've had it at some stage in our lives, for sure. So you were talking as well with me that in the context of career coaching, it could range from like a one-off session, or it could be maybe a couple of sessions over a short period of time, or it could even be a 12-month experience. Yeah. So talk us through that, and how does anyone ever know whether they need one session or a year-long support?
Absolutely. It really depends on where they're at in terms of their career management.
Sure.
Some people come and they have done a lot of work themselves. So they have the reflection, and they kind of know, okay, I want to make a move. This is the move I want to make. So we may be moving straight into the interview coaching side of it. So that's where I may be looking at helping them with the polishing up of their, confidence, and looking at how they really present themselves confidently at interview. And that might be one, maximum 2 sessions. For other people, then they're at that piece where I spoke about earlier, that career management capability. So they know something is but they're not sure what's not right. So you might have to go through a whole process, which may be 4, 5, 6 sessions around, exploring that, trying to separate what they want to do from what they don't want to do. And then it's creating that plan. So it's very much where people are at any key moment.
Yes. And for somebody who might stay with you for a whole year, what would you be doing for a year?
Yeah. So that could be, I suppose somebody has, decided where they want to move. They make the move, and then we may be onboarding. So it may be that career transition in terms of onboarding. So they might have moved from a specialist role, maybe a clinical specialist. They're now leading people, and they want to keep that monthly support so that they are effective and very effective very quickly in their first year.
Yeah. Which can really be one of the things that would make the difference between success and failure in a role like that when somebody makes a transition, for sure. So, Angela, like me, you transitioned out of HR and learning and development and into coaching. So what advice as a career coach would you give to somebody who might be now thinking about becoming a coach themselves?
Yeah. So I suppose there's a circumstances, your financial circumstances, I suppose, are going to be key. Let's face it. So I suppose if you are thinking of making the leap, it's to ask yourself, well, how are you going to support yourself while you build your business?
Yes.
And for some people, it may be the right time. They might have redundancy. They might have a nest egg. So it's like, giving yourself kind of a bit of space around that.
Yes.
I suppose that's the first thing. The second thing then is, what are you going to be offering your clients? Because there's a lot of coaches out there.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's around what are they going to be getting from you? So what change are you going to help people make to their lives? And then it's researching the market. So it's like, how many of these, if you're going to be a leadership coach, what audience? Is there a particular kind of industry that you're going to work with? That would be the second thing. And I suppose then, the entrepreneurial skills. So, you're coming out, and all of us coaches, we just want to get stuck in helping people. But there is the piece around you're going to be your own marketing executive, you're going to be your own accountant, you're going to be your own salesperson, there is going to be the advertising. So what have you in terms of those skills? So look, there are loads of supports. The local enterprise office here in Cork are fantastic. So, there are supports there. There are private business mentors you can go to. So it's really a strategy. It's the same as any career move. You need to have a strategy.
Yeah. And I think one of the core learning points for me when I went out on my own was actually another coach saying to me, you're not in the business of coaching, you're in the business of entrepreneurship. Yeah. And you happen to coach, So, and I think Network Cork, for me anyway, that has been an amazing resource in terms of, learning some of that business side of the business and the skills around that.
And the mentoring that's available.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you.
A fantastic way to actually build those skills.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, for members to remember that the support available to you as a member within the network is fantastic around many of the elements of business building. So I know when I spoke with Alva and you were saying you heard that interview, Alva Harrington, she talked about coaching being a referral business. Is that something that you would experience as well, that's how you kind of built up your reputation?
Absolutely. I suppose, I had worked in the health service for almost 20 years.
Yes.
So I was well known in those circles, I suppose, nationally as well as locally. So, when people kind of come, they kind of hear, gosh, Angela set up a business, and then you get a lot of referrals from there. And I suppose as well, even in terms of, networks like Network Cork.
Sure.
And that's a big thing I would say to people that, if you're in an industry or in a public system for a while, we're not great at building our networking skills.
Yes.
So that is one key thing I would say to people is before you come out, build those networks outside of your immediate circle, and then the referrals can come from there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, Angela, we've kind of referred to this a bit already, but this idea of kind of niching down and developing a niche and where you kind of get your reputation and are known. So for you, that was a bit of a journey, wasn't it? Yes. So maybe talk us through that, because I'm sure it's similar for others.
Yeah. So I suppose, you come out, and especially if you're a coach that has had exposure to, a number of different coaching spheres. So I suppose, again, mine was leadership coaching, interview coaching, management coaching. I had developed internal coaching programs. So you're kind of coming out with all of these ideas, and I could do this and I could do that. But, if you're trying to market all of those, that's a lot of, they're all nearly individual businesses in themselves.
Yes. And it gets mixed up kind of.
It can.
Yeah.
And so I suppose it's about asking yourself, first of all, well, what do I enjoy most? That's very important. And then it's, you can test the market, and it's like, what are people, kind of most looking for me? The career and interview coaching I would have found was a very tangible side of it. So, for example, with the interview coaching, the people come once or maybe twice, 2 sessions, and they either get the job or they don't. Thankfully, most of my clients do. So that was one thing, I suppose, that kind of really kind of got me to narrow down my focus, so that you're having one that maybe one side of your business that's very tangible, it's a very quick win, and then there might be a long-term building to your actual business. So maybe if you're going to be developing programs or whatever on the side, that maybe is a longer-term thing, and it has a different strategy. You have to engage with businesses, engage with organisations. So I think, you can start wide and narrow. Certainly, it'll take a bit more time. Or if you really have an idea, is to niche early. So it really depends on where people are at and how much time they have and how much financial.
Yes. Yeah, so as somebody who's been on that journey, I would say a conversation with someone like yourself, Angela, could really cut to the chase for people. So for some interviewers, it's entirely possible that they have an interview coming up. Oftentimes it's a dreaded experience for people. So what might be some tips that you'd have for listeners who are preparing for interview at the moment?
So again, I suppose it is around reflection. So a lot of the clients that come to me, they've already been through an interview process, and they're usually coming because they have felt they haven't done very well, or they are kind of maybe more on the other side of the spectrum where they're just absolute nervous wrecks when it comes to interviewing. So it is about exploring that lack of confidence come from. And you'll find that information from past interviews that you've had. So for some people, and I'd say for the majority of people, if you prepare well, you're going to have more confidence, because you're more confident in talking about, your experience. You've put a structure around your interview answers that you're going to give, particularly around competency-based interviews.
Yes.
Competency-based interviews, people have a huge dread of them, but they're very easy to prepare for, because all of the information is in the job specification. Yes. So I suppose tip number 1, read the job specification and pick out the pieces that you feel, I'm not very sure about that. I'm not sure of that policy, I'm not sure of that strategy. There you are. That's your preparation. And I suppose then it's around, what experience do you have that match the competencies for the role? Yes. So it's really then looking at, if I have a bit of experience, how do I succinctly now put that into an answer? So looking at something like the STAR technique, the situation, the task, the action and the result, putting a structure around it, and then practice makes perfect. So who can you, kind of rope in at home or at work to kind of, talk through your examples and get more confident in articulating it very confidently?
Yes. And do you think, when the competencies are listed and maybe I have a gap in one of them, but I know it's crucial to the role, do I screen myself out straight away if I don't have that competency? Should I just not apply?
It depends on the role. Okay. I think, for some, you may not have it at a certain level. So if you're going for a more senior role, you might not obviously have had it at a senior level. So for example, if you're going to be leading and managing people, you might have later managed 1 or 2 people. It's still using the skills of leading.
Yes.
The next role might require you to lead a team, but you have developed your competency. So it's not to immediately rule yourself out. It's explore and really kind of funnel down to say, do I have those skills, but maybe not in the same, I suppose, the quantity.
Yes.
So don't be very quick to rule yourself out. It's just to really explore and delve into what's my experience? Can I bring anything to this role?
Yeah. And I suppose, again, this is the difference working with a coach can make, because oftentimes we can't see that in ourselves. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, Angela, the only other thing I maybe want to check with you is if there's somebody thinking about going the coaching route, whether as an internal coach or to go set up their own business. We've talked a little bit about if you go out on your own and the kind of skills on the business side that's required there as well. If I was interested in becoming an internal coach, is there any suggestions you'd have for people around that?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, I was very fortunate in the health service. There was a huge support for coaching, because, a lot of people there themselves in I suppose, leadership management had availed of coaching, so they could see the benefit.
Great.
So it's about, first of all, speaking to, your immediate line manager, maybe the HR department, to see, is there a coaching, I suppose, maybe circle there already? There may be. And then it's about, how you feel that can bring value to the organisation. So you may be spotting something as an employee that you feel coaching could actually help with. Of course, the best thing to do is go and have coaching yourself first, to see, what benefit you get out of it. And then it's choosing, like I know in Alva's podcast, she spoke about choosing the right, level of training. So, making sure you are going with something that has that mix of both the academic side, but also the experiential.
Yeah.
And then I suppose it's about, if you can get funding, great, internally. And I suppose making a plan, really, like any professional development plan you have in the workplace. What value is it going to bring to the organisation? Yes. What are you going to do with it? What are the results going to be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So really being able to kind of see the business case for it and being able to put that forward to support your case. All right, super. Andrew, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your tips here today. It's been a privilege to have you as my guest. I know our listeners and our members will benefit so much from your wisdom. So just to remind everybody else again, if we have listeners who would like to reach out to you around career and interview coaching, where can they connect with you?
Yep. So it's Insightful Works Coaching Solutions. So insightfulworks.ie. So you'll get all the information there. I'm also on Facebook. So it's Angela Smiddy on Facebook. Or sorry, on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn. I was wondering that because I'd seen you on LinkedIn. Okay, Angela Smiddy on LinkedIn. So to Network Cork and all the organising committee this year, a huge thank you for everything that you do for us as members. I've said this before, I think you're the best network ever. Special thanks to Paula Scopetta and Lorna Horgan on the Network Cork podcast team, to Coco and Ian again here at M5 Studio. If you do have some suggestions or questions that you'd like asked, on the coaching issue, we're coming to an end of that. But if you have suggestions for future topics, or if you'd like to volunteer to participate in future podcasts in the mini-series, please reach out to the podcast team. They're at corkpodcast@networkireland.ie. So that's corkpodcast@networkcork.ie. And finally, to all of you, our listeners, it's all about you. Our goal with the vodcast series this year is to give you information and input that you can use in your personal and your professional lives. And I hope this series on coaching, that it's given you insights on all the ways, the myriad of ways that coaching can support you to make your life better, fuller and more sustainable. For now, from the very bottom of my heart, a huge thank you for joining us today. Burbu agus Bannacht.